Alright, so this video will be about Google Drive and app scripts, and we'll be accessing the drive itself and folders and files. So as an example, basically if I have to this drive, you'll see that in my drive I have this downloaded pictures folder, and in this folder there are these two other folders, and there are these files in this downloaded pictures folder. And I'm going to show you how we can access those files and see where they are and all that kind of information. I'm going to do that through Apps Scripts, and I'll do that. You don't really have to do this through particularly spreadsheet application. Really any Apps Script application can do this, but in this particular case I'm going to use a spreadsheet application. I'm going to create an app script through the spreadsheet application. The first thing I'll have to do, obviously, I'll go under Tools and Script Editor, and that's going to create a new script editor, and I'm going to name this thing, instead of Untitled Project, I'll call it Folders and Files. That should be good enough. Give it some name. Zoom in enough for everybody to be able to see what's going on here, and we'll go ahead and create some code here that's gonna do what we need. So to be able to follow with this, there is one thing in addition you'll need, in addition to all the things that I already talked about regarding app scripts, is a while loop. So I'm gonna first show you how while loop works, and then I'll move on to actually showing you how we can go inside of the folder, get the files, and all this type of stuff. So how does while loop work? So first of all, the syntax of a while loop in JavaScript is this. So basically the way while loop works, you give it a condition in your parentheses, and as long as that condition is met, it's going to keep running the loop. So one of the dangers of a while loop is that you can end up running it forever, and then it will never actually stop running. So you have to be careful and make sure that whatever logic you make, there's going to be an end to it while it's turning the loop, right? So first of all, well, see, I was trying to save it, gives me the error, but that doesn't matter. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to first create a variable. I'm going to call the variable x. I'm going to say the variable x is 20, right? Initially, we'll say it's 20. So I'm going to say while x is greater than 0, do this, right? Do the loop. And inside of the loop, I'm going to just log the x so we can see what the number is. So I'm saying, well, x is greater than 0, run this. Now, if I simply just run this, it's going to keep running this forever because x is going to be 20, which is greater than 0 all the time, and it's going to forever run this loop. So what I need to do somehow, I need to change the value of the x, so at some point it stops being greater than 0. So what I'll do after I log the number, I'll say, well, let's take the x and say that x should be x minus 1. So I'll take the x and deduct 1 out of the value. So initially when it's 20, when it's going to log out the x here, and then we'll say then that 20 minus 1 is 19, so our x is 19 now. And then it's going to come back here and say, is 19 greater than 0? Yes, it is. So it's going to run it again. So let's save this. At some point, it's going to stop because it's going to be not greater than 0, right? So if I run this and we view the log, see, it starts with a 20, 19, 18, 17, keep going until 1, and then x is 0, and 0 is not greater than 0. So it doesn't do that anymore. It gets out of this loop. And that's how while loop works. Basically, it does something until the condition is not met anymore. So then it's out of the loop. So for example, if I deduct 5 every time out of that. First time it's going to be 20, then we'll deduct 5, it's going to be 15, then it's going to be 15, that's going to go through, then it's going to be 10, that's going to go through, then it's going to be 5, that's going to go through, and then 5 minus 5, we're going to get 0, and 0 is not greater than 0, so that point is going to get out of the loop, and it's not going to run it. So to show you that, let's look at the log. See, 20, 15, 10, 5, and then it becomes 0, which means, well, it's not gonna do anything at that point, so it doesn't run. So that's how our while loops work, and we're gonna have to use those in this particular tutorial. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna delete everything I just did, and first of all, I'm gonna name this function. I'll call this get the files for the time being. And what I have to do, first of all, I have to access the drive. So DriveApp. So I'll just call it variable DApp. That will be my DriveApp. Should be my drive app. I believe that's what it's called. We'll find out. Yes, it is. So we get the methods and everything that goes with it. So that's our variable DriveApp, and these are all the methods that are in there. So first of all, I'll just put this in a variable, let it stay there. So what I want to do first, I want to first get this folder that I was in, right? So this folder is called downloaded pictures. So to get to that folder, I'm going to access that variable that I made, and I'm going to say get folder by name. So I want to basically get that folder by the name of the folder. So I could do it by the ID, but it's going to be a lot easier to just use the name because we already know the name. So if you have several folders that have the same name, then I guess you're not going to be able to use this. So the name is downloaded pictures. So it's text string. So in quotes, downloaded pictures. That should be the folder. I'm gonna again put it in a variable. So that should return a folder. And by the way, one thing that I should probably have mentioned is when I do this get folder by name, see it says what it's going to return is a folder iterator. And I'll talk about that in a second. So that's going to be important. So there we are. Now inside that folder, we're going to say the reason it's going to be folder iterator is that again, if you remember what I've mentioned is that what if we have two folders that have the same name? Because it's a possibility. You know what? I just did the wrong method here. So get folder by name. That's what I should have used, not files, but it should be the same thing. Download pictures. So again, we get an iterator, and our iterator is going to be this thing that basically, what is an iterator? It's something that will give us a new thing that it has every time we run next on it. So let's say if it found 5 different folders with the name downloaded pictures, the first time I run next, I'm going to get the first folder. If I run it the second time, I'm going to get the second folder. If I run it the third time, I'm going to get the third folder, and so it goes. Now, I'm just getting my folder by its name, and I know I'm going to have one folder. So I'm going to do next right away on this, and that should return me the folder that I have. So I'm going to call var my folder. Maybe I should have called this folder iterator and this one folder. Maybe let's do that. Folder iter. So that's gonna be that, and then we'll actually get the folder by running our next on it. So at this point we should get the folder. So if I just logger.log that folder, we should get a folder, which in this particular case is probably going to be an object, which means it's not going to give us much. But right now it's going to ask for permissions, right? Because it's trying to access my Google Drive. I'm going to review permissions and give it access. So advanced. If you watch previous videos, you know how to do this already. I've done this many times. It says that it's going to be able to manage files on my Google Drive. Allow. And by the way, one thing I probably should have mentioned about this is that this gives you direct access to your files and folders on your Google Drive. So if you're just testing things out and you're not sure what you're doing, maybe don't run it on an account that has anything important in it. First, test this on a different account when there is nothing that you care about. And then maybe once you're sure about what you're doing, start using this, because you can do some real damage using this stuff to your existing files. So anyways, so that's what I did. I ran it. I'm just going to look at my log. It says downloaded pictures. All right, so fair enough. Now, what I'm going to do inside of that folder, I'm going to get files in that folder. The thing is that I don't want to get a particular file. What I want to get is all the files in that folder. So I'm just going to run this get files method, which is again going to return an iterator. If you remember, it's basically all of these files that is going to have, only we're going to have to run next to get to the next file every single time. So I'm going to just do get files, and I'm going to say my variable files equals, this is not really my files, it's my files iterator. Maybe I should have called it that. Why not? So that's the iterator of that. Now, the thing in this case is that I'm not really sure how many files I'm going to have here. I don't want to just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how many files, run it this many times. I want to keep running and finding files until I run out of the files in this folder. So if I upload more pictures to this folder or whatever files I'm uploading, I want to be able to just grab all the files and get their names. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to get back here, and this is where you do this while loop. But before I do the while loop, I want to show you a couple of methods, right? So this file iterator has this two methods that I'm going to use in this particular case. One is this has next, and this one is next. So next is where you run next to get to the next thing in this iterator. So if I just run next, see if I ran next here, I got to that first folder in that list of folders. I had just one, so I got that one folder and I moved on. But if I had a second one, I could do folder iter next again, and I would get to that one. So what I mean by that is if I do this, the first time I run it, it's going to get me the first file. But if I then run it the same exact line again, now the second time is going to get me the second file. If I run it the third time, it's going to get me the third file. Now, the way I'm going to do it, instead of manually doing those lines, I'm going to do that with a loop. But I have to know when to stop doing this. And this is why there is this method called hasNext. And this hasNext is basically giving you true or false values. So when it still has things in it, which means there are more files, it says that the hasNext is true. Otherwise, if there are no more files in there, it's going to say that hasNext is false. And that's exactly what I'm going to use, this hasNext method, to know where to stop running the loop. And I'm going to say while this file iterator has next, so while there is still more files, then I want to actually run that method next. on it when I type it right, obviously. So when I run it, it's going to give me the actual file that I want. So I'm going to say variable file equals this. This is going to give me the next thing in a list. And then that file is going to be the actual. So if I just go back here under next, see it says that it's going to return me a file object, which means as a file object, it's going to have its own properties. So for example, we can, let's say some things we can get. We can get the date created for that file. We can get the description of that file. We can get the ID of the file. We can get when it was last updated. Well, for now, what we're interested in to get the name of the file to start with. So I'm going to say, let's get the name, and it's going to come back as a string, meaning text, which seems pretty good to me. So get name, that's what I want to do. So finally, let's just store it in a variable for now. So that's going to be the file name for this file on the first run. Now, when it gets back the second time, it's going to be the second file and the name of the second file. So let's just log this out to make sure that's exactly what's happening. And I'm going to say, let's just log out the name of the file. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this function. There we go. View logs. And as you can see, that's exactly what I got. I got my files. So I have all of these. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 files. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And perfect. So we start with this 534154, which is this one for whatever reason. And then 568 is the next one, which is looks like it's this one. Anyways, and then we run through all these files to get what their names are, and we got a list of all those names. Now, another thing I would like to get while I'm doing this is let's just get how large that file is. So I'm going to say the file size equals, and that's going to be the same file object, and this is where we can get different information about our file. So and that would be get size. Perfect. Save that. So now we have the file size. So I'm actually just going to copy this down so we can log out the size right below the file name. Go back. Here we are. That's the file. That's the size of that particular file that I have. This is another file. This is another size of this particular file. This will be in bytes. So if you want to convert it to, I don't know, kilobytes or megabytes or whatever, you would have to just do that conversion, obviously. So kilobytes, I guess 1024, if I'm not mistaken. That should get us down to a kilobyte size. So if I run this again, log, that would be 412 kilobytes. So if I made a mistake in this 1024, I'm sure somebody will correct me. That's really not the point of this. That should run and get me my file sizes and the files, right? Now at this point, we could maybe put this in our spreadsheet, so we have a list of all our files in our spreadsheet, right? So, but again, if it's not connected to your spreadsheet, this is where you got your files, you got the sizes for your files. Now, based on this, you could have created some logic. So maybe if the file size is greater than a certain size, so what sizes do we have? So we have like 400 kilobytes, 379, 50, 78. I don't know. Maybe you could say if it's greater than 200 kilobytes, let's put that in this large folder. And if it's not, let's put it in the small folder. But for right now, since we're working with a spreadsheet app, I'm going to first put it in a spreadsheet to do that, I'm going to, of course, access my spreadsheet app. So equals spreadsheet app. Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm gonna get to my active spreadsheet, and I'm gonna get to my active sheet. Again, if you're not sure what I'm doing here with the spreadsheet app, I have a lot of videos that cover this, so go ahead and watch those and it will make a lot more sense. So maybe I'll just call it SS for active. That's my spreadsheet. So that's gonna be the actual active sheet that I'm gonna be working on, which is this. And maybe we'll just put all those files here line by line. So we'll just say, well, once you get the file name, well, let's just get to our spreadsheet and get range. So we're gonna put it, well, for the beginning, I'll start in the first row in the first column, and I say that let's set the value of that to name of the file. Now that's just gonna repeatedly put it in the first row, right? So we're gonna have to use an iterator or something here so we can actually do that. So for that, I'll probably create an iterator here, an index. I will say variable I. We're gonna start with 1, I guess. So that's where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna say, instead of the first row, put it in the I row, and then once all said and done, I will say let's increment I by 1. And this I++ is the same as saying I equals I plus 1. It's just a shorter way of writing it. So, and then when it goes to the next round of looping, and now the I is going to be 2 and 3, 4, 5. So that way we're going to put the file name where it's supposed to go. Now we probably want our sizes to be in the second column. So I'm going to just copy that whole thing. And instead of the first column, I'll use the second column. It should be the same row, so that should work. And then we'll just use our file size variable right there. So now I'm going to run, and it's probably going to give me the message that it needs more access now to the spreadsheet. Of course it is. Review permissions. Now I have to give it permission to access the spreadsheet and make modification to that as well. I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. Allow. It ran. Now going back, here we go. So we started with at 412, just to give you this list, right? This is the first one, the second one. So we ended up basically just putting a list of all the files from that particular folder and the size in kilobytes. Now, what I'm gonna do as a next step, I'm going to get access to my other folders that are here in this folder that I have. So in this folder, we have a folder called large, called small. So both of these folders, I want to put them in a variable. So in order for me to do that, see, this is the way we got to this folder, which gives us the folder that's our downloaded pictures folder. Now all of our other folders, large and small, are inside of that actual folder. So if I go under get folder by name, so that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna get those particular folders. One is called large, the other one is called small. So I'm gonna say, well, the one is called large in lowercase, and then once we get that folder that's large, and again, it's gonna be the same thing. Remember when we got this folder, then we had to go to that iterator and do this next method on it to access the actual folder itself. So to avoid that extra step, I'm just going to do next right on this, which is going to get me to that particular folder right away. So I'm going to say, well, variable large folder equals this. And then I also have to do this for my small folder. This folder equals small. Hopefully I didn't mistype any of those names. Large folder, small folder. So now we're accessing those folders that are inside of this folder, and we're storing them in variables that we can use. Now we have the large folder, we have small folder. Those are our folders. So now what I want to do, I want to go inside of my loop and do some sort of logic. I want to say if my file size is greater than, so the file size is at this point is what we figured out is in kilobytes. If I didn't do any mistakes in conversions, I'm going to say if the file size is greater than 200, meaning greater than 200 kilobytes, then let's execute some sort of logic. So the logic I'm going to execute is I'm going to say, well, let's get the actual file in that particular case. So the file is going to be this that I have. I don't want the actual name of the file. I want the file object itself, so I can get the methods of that file, because the name is just going to be text. So at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to see what I could do to that file. So I could get URL. I can make a copy of it, which is what I think I'm going to do. Well, that looks good. So I'm going to make a copy. So see the make a copy, it says make a copy and folder destination where we're making that copy. I'm going to do a copy, and I'm going to copy it to this large folder right there. So otherwise, which means otherwise it's not greater than 200, maybe I'll make a copy, but instead of copying to the large folder, I'll copy it to my small folder. Oh, that was not the right place to paste it. Sorry about that. It's right here. So first of all, let's just make sure we don't have anything in our folders. So see, large, nothing in there. Small, nothing in there. All right, so that's fair enough. Now I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to run the script and see what we get. That took quite a little bit. Now it should be fine, because if it was actually copying those files, it would probably take time. So let's just make sure that actually worked. So I'm going to go under large. Here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 pictures which were placed in the large folder, and we have the rest of the pictures which are copied to our small folder. That should be perfect. So for example, this one is, these two were large, right? So 534154 and this 568. So we should be able to find them in our large folder. So what was it? 534154. 53. There it is. That one. And this other one was 3785 something. There it is. Anyways, I think that should do it for this video. I hope you've learned something. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.